Okay, hello. I just want to share with you a few very basic tips on how to add some more depth to your doodles. This is not an exhaustive guide, because this is something I struggle with too. I'm going to make a few examples of what I would call very flat or two-dimensional doodles, and then I'll show you how to maybe flesh them out a little bit. All right, so for this one, I'm just starting out with some very basic shapes. And you're already getting some depth here just by making the circles overlap, right? But there's something we can do to give it some more oomph. For example, in this case, I would start by completely shading in some of the ones in the back. One of the keys that you're going to notice here is that even when I'm doing abstract shapes that just come out of my brain, I'm still pretending that there's a light source. A lot of the time I kind of default to the light source being like a sun or a light bulb that's in the upper right hand corner. So that is up there shining down in this direction, which means that everything on this side of all the shapes, which are 2D circles, but in your brain you can imagine that they're 3D spheres. So this side of the circle will be white, but on this side you can have some shadow. And also if there's a circle behind this one, maybe it can have some shadow cast on it. You know, this one is behind all the other ones. There's maybe some shadows there. It's looking like, you know, maybe you can add some other circles back here that are completely in shadow. One pretty flat drawing of circles becomes, I think, a much more three-dimensional clump of circles, which could be grapes or pellets or I don't know what you want this to be. Use your imagination. Let's work with some other shapes over here. For this one, I'm just going to draw a bunch of noodles. Before I get to this, let me label this as balls. And these are tubes. If we once again think of the light source, we want to think about how it would cast shadows here. So for example, depending on how close one noodle is to the other, it's probably going to cast a shadow on here. And if they're curved noodles, you know, the shadow is probably going to be curving a little bit like this and this. Kind of work with them a little bit. And then you just kind of follow each noodle down, see where it crosses another noodle. It's already popping a little bit more. There might be even noodles in the background that are completely in darkness because they're just way back there. You know, I don't really like that one I did there, but you're not going to like everything you draw. It's okay. And you can just keep doing this until it's a very dense clump. All right, here for this one, I'm just going to draw some kind of abstract shapes clumped together like this, okay? These are all kind of shapes made of straight lines. Let's call it angular clump. Let's use the same light source as the tubes. So this time, the left side of a lot of the shapes will be lighter, and the right side will be a little bit darker. You can just use some hatching, or you can, by the way, hatching is a shading technique with pen usually, where, you know, instead of just making like a solid black square, you can get gradients of darkness by making just a bunch of parallel lines like this, or it can make something that looks slightly lighter by spacing out the lines a little bit more, or you can do something called cross hatching, where you go like this and add other lines like this. Adds a cool texture. Or maybe you want to, something I do is go like this sometimes and then angle it like this. This adds a cool texture. And if you want just part of it to be darker, come at a different angle. See, now half of it's a little bit darker. Just get a piece of paper and just draw a bunch of lines like this. And just keep kind of adding to it, see what happens when you add some lines here, 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 maybe on top of them. Go solid. This is a way of doodling right here, just keeping on adding more lines. Just play with it. All right, but back to this. You know, I'm thinking right here, this is kind of a deep, dark area. If the light's coming in from here, this looks like it would be kind of a cave. So I'm going to kind of make this nice and dark. Down here would be nice and dark too. This is a far side where not much light is getting in. Here, I think is going to be pretty dark. Here, this is kind of, I'm imagining this is kind of an overhang. So I think this is going to be kind of dark and then maybe get a little bit lighter. When you look at a shape like this, you could say, no, I think this is actually coming out towards the viewer, so this would actually have a lot of light on it. You can, when you add the shading, you're actually defining the shape in all sorts of different ways. 10 different people, given this unshaded shape, could shade it in different ways, and it would look totally different, but still correct. And you come in with different angles, so you're kind of getting the idea here, right? You can come over to the far side here, add some totally shaded sections that are completely black. Maybe there's something here that's completely in the shadow, and then it comes up here with a little bit of light on it. Who knows? Okay, don't freak out about it. All right, what else? Let's get a blob shape over here. It's kind of like the balls, but a more evolved version of the balls, the blob. Kind of like a cloud. There we go. Actually, it's looking very much like a cloud, but trust me, this thing is sticky and it smells bad. So how do we add some depth to this kind of doodle if we're just having fun making wiggly lines on top of each other? Well, these ones can be a little bit challenging, because if you use these straight lines, like an angular clump, it can kind of throw off this kind of squishy, rounded feeling, right? So a lot of the times when it comes to the blob, I kind of do the same hatching technique, but I make sure all my lines are a little bit rounded, like this. Every single little hatching line I'm making, none of them are straight, because the structure I'm putting them in, those aren't straight either. See that? The lines kind of form the shape they're on. The more you do this, the more comfortable you'll get with it. The more you'll know which little techniques you like, which ones work good for you, which ones don't. And just know, like once again, if the light is coming from up here, the LS, then, you know, maybe over here you're not going to have as much shading, but maybe there's like a little dark, deep spot in here. That would make sense. Slowly starts to take form. What used to just look like some lines on paper starts to look like some weird blob that could actually be sitting on your desk, stinking up the whole place. These are stink lines. What shape should we do next? Let's start with a box. I'm just doodling, okay? I'm not planning out what I'm making. I'm trying to make it kind of flat and two-dimensional at this point so I can show you how I come back in and add more shading and give it more depth. But for example, I might come in here and I might color in this whole corner. All this needs to be black. I'm also thinking that probably this whole section and this whole section needs to be colored in. It's okay if you miss some little spots. Basically, we're trying to create some variation in how dark things are. Things that you color black are gonna recede back into the paper, like these areas, they go back, and then the things you leave white, like this thing here and this thing here, will pop forward. Color this black. So this is just a quick little aimless doodle, but I think you get the idea that there's a big difference between this doodle now and how it looked before I started adding some shading. If you look up tutorials on shading 3D objects, they will start you out with basic shapes like a circle or a sphere, you know, once again tell you about the light source, and then you'll shade your spheres kind of like this. You know, if you get fancy enough, there's things about reflected light, and then you'll probably learn how to shade a cube. You can have 3 different amounts of shading on here. For example, this backside can be the darkest, and then this other side here, which gets a little bit of light, have some lighter shading. It's been a long time since I tried to draw a cube's shadow. Maybe it looks something like that. I could be getting it totally wrong. A shadow, of course, helps your brain realize it's a nice 3D object more than a lot of things. And if you want to do it on a sphere, then you just draw like a little shallow ellipse right under it. Then it looks like it's resting on a surface, which of course makes it pop out even more. I feel like I messed up this shadow big time. But like I'm saying, basically what I'm trying to show you is that you can go look up shading tutorials and then take what you learn from shading basic shapes and apply it to the weirder shapes that you have in all your other doodles. This right here is a sphere, right? You'll learn to shade a cylinder too. Everything that you find in your doodles will just be repeats of these basic shapes. These are pyramids and cubes, and these are cylinders, these are spheres. There's a nice cylinder. I'm bad at the shadows. I don't draw shadows a lot, and that's how it works. If you don't do something very much, you're probably not going to be that good at it. Don't expect yourself to. If you set out to do some doodling with shading and trying to add depth, and it doesn't go well right off the bat, then don't beat yourself up about it, okay? I didn't want to make this video too long, but thanks for watching. And yeah, see you guys later.